Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Fireside Chat. I'm Coburn Shepik, CEO of Dovetail Investment Group. Happy to be with you today. In today's call, we're going to be covering what causes distress in commercial real estate. So there is obviously a lot going on in the economy, a lot of uncertain times we're experiencing, and likely there's going to be a lot of distress. And so to understand what causes it is very important. And for one, it helps investors be able to understand risks, especially in a time like this, as well as it helps investors and operators and sponsors locate incredible opportunities. So happy to be diving into this topic today. A few of the topics that we're going to be discovering. One, quick recap on what distress looks like. And then I want to just take a few minutes and give a quick introduction to Dovetail. And then we'll dive into the 7 causes of distress. And at the end here, we'll give a little bit of our State of the Union. So to dive right into it, a quick recap on distressed assets and what that looks like. So distress obviously can look like many different things. And, for one, the perception from the investor or on paper from a loan perspective. So firstly, a distressed property can be distressed for many different reasons. If it's not performing or if it can be, better used, that can be considered obviously distressed. But the distress that we're really talking about are loan defaults and non-performing loans and foreclosures. And so this is a big topic, and there's a lot of areas and types of distress. For example, there's many different types of defaults, and there's a process for what that looks like in stages of foreclosure, for example. And during those stages, there's different levels or phases of a foreclosure process. And during those phases, there's different levels of risks and rewards, for example. So an REO would be, an REO property would be an example of distress. But by that time, the title's clear and it's ready for a new buyer, and it carries the least amount of risk, for example, but you're also paying potentially the most for that distressed asset compared to when there's a notice of default or a foreclosure paperwork are submitted by the county. Those are phases where there's more opportunities to potentially get discounts. And then from a lender's perspective, when talking about non-performing loans, it's earlier on in the distress where potentially discounts occur, and then there's an asset cleanse. And so this is distressed assets and what it looks like. And distress is everywhere, no matter what is going on in the economy. Distress happens everywhere for whatever reasons at whatever level. So when talking about residential, for example, then you get into seller distress, which happens for many reasons like divorce and all sorts of personal, emotional level causes of distress. So I want to just quickly take a few slides, talk about Dovetail and what we're doing. We're super excited to be launching this company, and we have some incredible opportunities coming up. So we invest in exceptional real estate assets by combining our expertise with the track record of our best-in-class partners to insulate and grow the wealth of our investor consortium. Dovetail is a private investment firm that makes principal investments using its own capital and capital raised from outside sophisticated investors, primarily into commercial real estate assets. We align with seasoned operating partners to strategically place capital and leverage our expertise to structure the risk away from ourselves and our investors. So a typical investment profile that we're looking for, we are playing in all across the landscape of the commercial real estate sector currently. So multifamily, industrial, there's obviously a lot of attention towards single family rentals, build to rent communities, both on the acquisition and development side. And this would be mostly opportunistic areas, distress situations, special situations, as well as core and core plus opportunities. Most of these investments would be held anywhere from 5 to 7 years typically. So who we work with established and evolved investors who are attracted to investing alongside some of the world's best real estate operators and sponsors to insulate their wealth and reputation in an uncertain world. So what our operating partners all have in common? Number one is an audited track record. What projects have these operators done? Have they been successful? What markets have they operated in? All this is very important, as to these operators are fully responsible for everything that goes along inside this investment, the project. And so verifying the track record is really key to us in choosing our operating partners. And these operators need to at least have gone through 2 economic cycles. 2008 would be one of those. During distressed times, capital flows change, demand changes, everything changes. So having that experience alongside a strong co-investment and having that conviction is super important to us. So what we do, we locate the best of the best operating partners in each part of the sector, in each part of the commercial real estate sector. So as far as multifamily in a market like Phoenix, for example, would be one particular operator. And so we would locate that operator that has expertise in that market and that sector, along with these underlying principles that we follow. So our values, it is super important for us having an alignment of interest between us, our investors, and our operators is at every level beyond economics is very important. Building a community of investors that can align personally with their personalities, for example, and their goals, along with their legacy, in line with our operating partners and the actual opportunities that come with that. Secondly is communication. Obviously, doing business and think of it as a spouse, having communication is very important to us. So we obviously follow regular planned communication along with proactive communication when things happen, and they do in this business. So that is another important value to us. Transparency. We would not be doing this if it wasn't for these partnerships and people involved, and it has to be transparent, and that goes along with integrity. And nextly would be boldness. We are not going to pit every opportunity out there. We're very selective, and the opportunities that we do take are very bold, and we like to think big. Results. We like an alignment of interest. It's very important for me to have opportunities that produce real results, not over a phone call, but real results, and that we can celebrate those results as a community. And lastly is impact. The opportunities that we select go align with our ethos and with the long-term mission of Dovetail. So thank you for listening to that. Let's dive into today's topic of what causes distress in commercial real estate. So starting with the number one source here, which is the operator or the borrower. Okay. All distress typically begins with the operator or the borrower. And the reason of that is because of the amount of responsibility that the operator and the borrower carries. some of the responsibilities would be sourcing these opportunities. For one, a ground up development takes a lot of time in just locating the land, entitlement process. So all this takes a lot of time, obviously, and a massive amount of effort. And so not only sourcing, but getting the financing and working with all the people involved and getting the selecting the right market and the right address, for example, getting the financing done, and also managing the day-to-day operations. So all of this, because of all the responsibilities that the operator obviously carries, the biggest risk lies within the people that are managing the day-to-day operation. And so alongside with the day-to-day operation, they are also responsible for executing the key events that are important to aligning with the business plan. And we'll get into key events later. So as far as the operator, back to how we partner with the operators that we choose. You can't just trust operators. It needs to be verified. There needs to be a track record there, or there needs to be other advisors or other team members involved who have experience in that particular sector or that particular market, because the operator carries the absolute most risk. So secondly is time. Time is obviously the ultimate factor in the investment world, and as far as results, and because of that, time is the ultimate deal killer. So when a project gets dragged along for whatever reason, that could absolutely diminish the returns. And so time is very crucial. So understanding who controls the time, right? And that would be deal dependent. Is it the operators? What do their lives look like? How much effort are they putting into the deal? Because if they are only putting in, X amount of time, deal gets dragged along for other personal reasons, for example, that could really hurt the deal. And so knowing what the time frame is, who's controlling the time, et cetera, can allow you as an investor to understand the risk in the time aspect. So there are these underestimated costs, which is another big one, and it comes from poor due diligence, lack of knowledge, and so having the right key players, and that means the right general contractors that understand the market, that know how to work with the city, and if in that example, or they're have a track record in these particular types of deals, along with a conservative underwriting process and professional models, is key to controlling that risk. So underestimated costs are a big one that seem like common sense, and it unfortunately is one of the biggest risks. So key events, which we brought up earlier, key events are a big one, and it's case by case. It's by deal type. So for example, in a land deal or in a ground up development deal, there's a certain process to what that development looks like. For one, there's finding the land, and but the events would be getting the entitlements. That would be an event that needs to happen in order for the business plan to execute, which would be developing the land, of course. So entitlements would be one. If there was a value add deal, for example, it might be remodeling the kitchens or whatever that business plan looks like. And so these key events are very important, and understanding the key events, if you're looking at a deal from an investment standpoint and you look at a development deal and it needs X, Y, and Z, lease up, for example, it needs to be built, it needs construction, it needs permits, it needs to be leased up, etc. All these events that need to happen are obviously case by case, and a lot of them carry risks in them failing. So understanding the key events and what that looks like can help determine the risks, the risks that come along with those failing. Property being over leveraged, which is a big one. Common term which we don't like is over leveraged, obviously. And so over leverage usually comes from the project type and along with the key events failing. So for example, in construction, when depending on the deal and how it's structured, of course, when certain events happen, such as constructing this amount, for example, could buy down the debt depending on how it's structured. And so likely when there's bridge debt, you're trying to get rid of that debt in order to come up with a permanent loan. So when those events fail, that's when properties could become over leveraged, mostly opportunistic type of projects. And so understanding those events again would help understand, help us understand the risks associated with those events. Market conditions changing. So obviously we're experiencing that now, but what that might look like is softening demand, and that could mean in a time of the current economic times, of course, but that could also mean certain locations. We've had a lot of migration, obviously. So California, other places have had softening demand, people moving away from those areas, and then other metros like I am, which is Phoenix, has had massive in-migration, and so the opposite there. Tightening credit as well, which we're experiencing now, and inflation, which we're also experiencing now. So market conditions obviously can affect the asset, and but it depends on the asset as well. And so for inflation, for example, what we're experiencing now, properties dependent on the asset type, properties are affected differently. So apartments, for example, have high turnover rates, meaning that for one, people leave, and two, the lease renewal rate is usually every year, and sometimes even shorter than that. And so rents can be increased just as quick as those leases turn over. Unlike a triple net lease, for example, which could be years and years at a time, sometimes even 20 years, are obviously in a much different position because of the inability to increase rents to keep up with inflated costs. But that case is obviously differently affected by the market conditions because in that case the tenant would be responsible for the inflated costs. But depending on the asset, of course, if it's not a triple net lease, obviously could look much differently. But the point is that the different asset types are going to be differently affected by whatever market conditions that are changing. So rising interest rates, which we're experiencing now, we just had another 75 basis point hike, and so it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like. But rising interest rates affect cause distress because of capital flows tightening, and more conservative or more strict underwriting processes, and less capital actually maybe being flown into a certain market or certain asset, et cetera. And floating rates or floating debt is definitely going to be affected by rising rates. We're already seeing it. And so basically what that means is short-term debt, which is floating in a lot of cases. Interest rates rise, makes the cost of the project increase, and in some cases could really hurt a project. That's when negative leverage occurs. So also refinancing loans are going to be affected, as well as cap rates. Cap rates are going to have some pressure on it. We're already seeing that, I think, in some Class C areas, especially here in the multifamily sector. I see it right now, where, low fours are moving up to mid fours, which they're already that low. So it's crazy to even see that. But we are seeing, some pressure on cap rates, and it'll be interesting to see where this goes. So we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But rising interest rates are another big ones that causes distress. Okay, so those are the 7 ways that cause distress in commercial real estate, and being able to understand those is crucial to understanding the risk. So that was fun, and I want to take a few minutes to talk about the state of the market, the state of our union here. There's a lot going on, and I think we're in for some interesting times ahead of us. Obviously, uncertain times for sure. So a few of the topics that I want to cover here, just to dive right into it. So negative leverage is something that is, if you're not familiar with the term, it's a red flag for distress. Okay, and so floating debt, for example, that gets affected when rising rates occur, can create negative leverage. And when negative leverage occurs, some operators have the ability and the cash balance to cover certain situations and get through that. But it can also be very ugly depending on the deal and depending on the operator, of course, where it can get ugly, meaning that that if it is affected too much, then the rise in costs could force the operator to have to come out of pocket in order to come out of the increased expense. And so what does that mean? Obviously, that can create a pretty nasty situation that could lead to worst case scenario, which would be a foreclosure. And so that's kind of the risk that happens with negative leverage, which we're seeing right now. So in the example of, some of the operators that have purchased multifamily over the last, within the last 18 months or so, where cap rates have been compressed down to in the 3s, and now rates have shot up, have doubled. The cost of financing have doubled, nearly in the last, just this year. And so what does that mean? It means that the return on the current return on that asset is producing less of a return than the financing costs, which is, in my opinion, is one of the biggest red flags, because one of the greatest benefits to real estate is the ability of positive leverage, and to be able to buy great assets for with 30% of the cost. So that's a great advantage. And so with that red flag, it's a big turnoff. And so why are investors buying at these prices in the growing, the booming sectors such as multifamily right now? The reason is because of optimism in rent growth. And so the question is, how long can rents grow? And that's what we're really experiencing. And we're going to do another talk. And so I don't want to go too deep into this, because I want to spend some time, preparing for that. But we've got an affordability problem. So how far can rents grow is the question. And so when interest rates rise, obviously that affects the residential market in a negative way, because buyers are going to get priced out. And because buyers are going to get priced out, sellers need to move prices down in order to sell. but it also creates more demand for rental property in, in one perspective, because of being priced out. Now there's more renters, obviously. And so that does create more demand for rental property. But on the other hand, how far can rents grow? That's the real question. And it just goes in line with everything else. Gas prices are at crazy amounts, for example. Does that really affect things? Well, at scale, it obviously is big numbers. But how far can America last on an $8 gallon of gas? I don't know, and it's going to get nasty. So negative leverage and the affordability problem is a big topic that we're going to talk about next week. So if you're on this call, we'll be posting a link for next week as well, and where we're going to be talking about this a little bit deeper. So I'm excited about that. So consumer credit is another topic on the horizon. So throughout the pandemic and throughout the stimulus that was pumped into the economy, savings accounts, household savings rates were through the roof. We had trillions of dollars stacked up in savings accounts, which meant amazing things, right? And so right now we're starting to see spending slow down, and what's happening is consumer credit is going up, and that is telling us, alongside with these savings rates, that there is reliability on consumer credit. And so that, along with rising rates, are going to put some interesting pressure on things, and it's going to be definitely an interesting several months ahead of us, and we'll see what happens with interest rates. And this whole thing is just really crazy right now. So cap rates are something else that we're going to see what happens with that, because as we know, when the cost of financing increases, that increases the cost of yield. And so there's going to be some absolute pressure on cap rates. I think a lot of operators are denying it. But history shows that, is usually, are they exactly correlated? No, but they're going to, investment dollars are going to be demanding, some space here. But we're seeing lumber come down. The cost of development might be coming down. Has it seen its peak? It was up there, and it's starting to come down now. So, that is a good sign for development right now. And so, that does help development, along with rising rates. But rising rates are obviously the pressure, and what is holding us, and the major topic of discussion. So there's going to be, quite a lot of opportunities that we're planning on and talking about over the next, and then more shorter term, over the next, 6 to 12 months. And the real opportunities are still some time away, and that'll be a couple of years from now or so, where we might see it. It all depends on what rates, on what goes on with rates and everything. But if there continues to be this pressure, and if there is more of a hard landing, there will be great distressed opportunities. Are we planning on that or hoping for that? No, but having the understanding of what causes rates and what's going on in the market is important for us to have the ability to plan and take action in those cases. Some of the opportunities that we're looking at right now, adaptive reuse is a big opportunity right now with the housing situation, for example. And so there's a lot of opportunities in growth markets such as Phoenix, where there is still opportunities at this time in the cycle, and there's going to be obviously greater opportunities as things move on. But we are definitely holding our pens down at this time, where when we see some of the action that the Fed takes, and there's definitely a lot of people, and I have a lot of people that ask me too, like, isn't it worse to not take action right now? No, it is not worse, because I believe that a lot of the operators that are buying in, there's certainly opportunities that exist, but a lot of the capital that's being allocated to some of the residential sectors in certain markets on short-term loans, we're going to see some interesting some bumpy stuff ahead of us. So we're keeping our pens down and focused on the opportunities that are going to come, more of the opportunistic opportunities that are going to come from the distress that we think will come from this market. And there definitely will be winners and losers, and we're going to be absolutely prepared. So thank you for we're going to wrap this up. Thank you for being on the call today. If you'd like to learn more about some of the upcoming opportunities that we have, some of the distressed opportunities that are coming up, we'd love to keep in contact on that. And you can join our wait list. I want to invite you to join our wait list. Go to dovetailig.com/waitlist. If you're on the call, there's a link here, dovetailig/waitlist, or you can contact us and we can set up a conversation, or if you have any questions, you can reach us at partners@dovetailig.com. And we can, so if you join our wait list, you'll get notifications about these chats that we do, as well as some of the company updates. And when the opportunities that are coming do arise, you'll get first access to those. So I want to just invite you. It's just a name and email, join the wait list, and you can even you can find that just on our homepage as well. So anyway, I want to thank you again for your time today. I'm Coburn Shepik, wishing you an amazing week. If you missed part of this call, there will be a replay that we'll release in the next few days, and you can see that on email. If you are not on our list, you can go join our wait list and you'll get access to that as well. I'm Coburn Shepik, wishing you an amazing day. Thanks again. Bye-bye.